now tapped in with the introspective father and son duo. Last name may be strange, but never strangers to the game. Adjust the listening devices and keep it loud.
Coming in, flex. I just wanna win, LABB, who we running with, 2233, I'm on 10 again, state your name.
Hello, and welcome to another installment of No Strangers to the Game. For this week's episode, we're really going to be kind of doing a part 2 to last week's episode on technology. But first, like usual, we want to check in, just see how we're doing, things like that. Once again, new year, still here at home. Let's talk a bit about, we just did a goal setting session, and we don't want to get too far into it, but just kind of things that we're looking forward to trying to accomplish here in the next year.
For me, kind of basing my goal setting around a theme of being intentional, being courageous, and most of all, being happy, so that all those three things I think are necessary to be able to execute. Because sometimes things all come up that will require you to either think outside of the box or do something you're uncomfortable with. And then, you have to have the courage to take that step or take those actions and being intentional, getting up every day, focused to get something done, to do something so that you can accomplish those goals. And ultimately, being happy, because, if you're not happy in life, it makes it pretty challenging to continue on in a positive way and really be effective. So those are the things for me, as well as specific goals, with budgeting, making some prudent investments, just staying healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, making sure that I stay healthy in those ways, exercise, eat right, do the necessary things to keep my spirit lifted, and just emotionally, staying engaged and on top of things. So for me, those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to 2021 and accomplishing those tasks and goals.
Yeah, for me, I'm not a big goal setter. I think we've discussed that briefly on a previous episode. But for me, I definitely have, baseline expectations and that are measurable for myself, but I wouldn't say those are my goals because they're just what I expect to meet. I think for me, my goal in any situation and in anything I'm trying to do is just to go out and give my best, whatever that may be. Once again, there are expectations that I expect to meet. But in terms of a goal, I've never set, I have, but recently I have tried to stray away from setting specific measurable goals, and just to shoot for whatever, the maximum is for myself. Who knows what that may be. We disagree on that, but we don't have to get too far into that.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I'm excited for 2021 and just to keep trying to strive to do much better as a person, athletically, academically, financially, whatever it may be. So, but for today's episode, we're once again piggybacking off of last week's episode in the technology. We didn't mean to sound like Debbie Downers. We kind of got, stuck up into the negative aspects of technology and how we see it kind of going down a dark path, and somebody needs to do something to stop that. And that's very true. But there are also many positive aspects of the technology we're creating nowadays. Throughout history. But for, our current place, can you give us some of the positive aspects of technology that you see?
Well, the positive aspects, allowing us to be more efficient, allowing us to expand some of the things we do to address some of the concerns and issues such as climate change, such as illnesses, such as how we interact with, doctors and the, healthcare industry. Now, over the last several months with COVID being in effect, you have now video conferences with your doctor instead of having to go into the office. You have a conference with them. It's a little different, but if it's something that's not too serious, it allows you to be able to meet with the doctor without having to go in. You got this, copay, you're sitting in the lounge and waiting. So I think that makes it a lot more efficient to be able to do it that way, as well as just, being able to function, making life a little easier I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to take advantage of that, as well as the new influx of jobs and opportunities that I think are going to be interesting, exciting, and fun, and provide us with opportunities to change the world in a way that I think could be light years ahead of where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we were talking about it last time. We mentioned that it's really all about intent with the technology creating. And so since the beginning of time, technology has been created to make lives more convenient, to make tasks easier to do, so on and so forth. And until recently, it has kind of made a switch to where certain companies, not all of them, but certain companies have tried to make it predatory and use aggressive capitalism and make all their technology just a ploy to make a lot of money. But like we said, there are plenty of things and technological advancements that I think have that positive intent, that are trying to make life easier for people, make things more convenient, help people save money or help people stay healthy, whatever it may be. And so there are a lot of companies like that, and that's good to see. But in a specific aspect, how do you think technology or some of the positive aspects of technology are changing lives for the better currently?
Well, I would say in education, now you can have where I can go online and get a degree from an institution that's back east, where I would typically in the past have to actually live there, relocate. But with online and distance learning, that allows you to engage and take courses in a place that you're, several thousand miles away from. Technology in terms of communications has really improved, where we can literally see each other daily. Whereas in the past, hey, if you're in 2,000 or 3,000 miles away, there's no way for me to see you. Now we can FaceTime, we can Zoom, we can stay connected in those ways that we couldn't previously. So from a social and family, interaction, it helps. From education, it helps. All the ways around in which we interact with each other, technology has made it a little more efficient and possible to do things that we weren't able to do, years ago.
Yeah, that connectivity is key. And I think from a social aspect, it has a lot, but from a professional and even, like you said, a health aspect, being able to communicate with people across the world is just going to have tons of benefits that are going to make lives better for people everywhere. That connectivity is something that's key for us as humanity. To go back to last episode, we discussed how it's, a lot of the new social media and some of the technology can be unhealthy for our youth, and can be seen as a negative because the way they're interacting on social media and other things, that the use of technology is harming them. But there is, I think, a positive aspect in terms of the way we can engage youth through technology. And I know you have interesting views on that. Can you go ahead and let me know or talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think one of the things it does is it allows youth to dream again. I was watching something not too long ago, and I was on KRS-One. He was doing some presentation or lecture, and he said something that was really interesting me, where he said that, what if we put out, a call for our youth to come up with a way to dismantle guns?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To where now that whole idea of being shot in violence, police brutality, those things, if you had a mechanism or a way to dismantle those guns, and I know that's a far-fetched, but that's an idea to get our kids to begin to think and begin to look at ways of solving our problems that they realistically can. We have the technology, we have the means. It's just a matter of us investing in those opportunities for them to explore and giving them those opportunities. Like the documentary we watched the other night with Tinker Hatfield. Mm-hmm. He's the guy who designed many of the Jordan shoes. And so he's the one who's, responsible for a lot of iconic shoes that came out over the last several years that Jordan wore and that Jordan brand. And he just came in and, one things that he said is that he looked at athletes and their feet and how, their shoes, were tied so tight and the stress that it puts on them. But he said, what if we had a shoe that was able to, conform, contract, and then expand as the athlete's foot is needed? for it to do that. And, he came up with this idea where you had a shoe that was basically, could tie itself, but it could just tie its own laces and adjust as, needed for the athlete. And those are the type of things that really excite me, because it allows us to think beyond what's currently here and imagine something that, no one probably ever thought about, and expanding our horizons and our opportunities to, evolve as, humans, as an industrial country, a world, and just to make things, a lot more proficient and efficient for us.
Yeah. And it's funny because like we talk about connectivity, but also the influence that, social media and technology has on our youth, because they're on it so often,
right,
which is one thing we do need to change. But if they are going to be on there, I think it can be used as a tool to allow them to be, first of all, make their voices heard. Second of all, allow them to be a part of the change and some of the innovation that's going on.
Right.
And two, since you have the attention and influence of such a large group of youth, hopefully you can use that positively and positively impact their lives, and in turn positively impact your future, because those are, the next generation.
Yeah, and I always, look at it and say, if you have someone who's really a gamer and they love playing video games, instead of arguing and complaining about how much you're on the computer and you playing these video games, well, let's look at these video games from a different perspective. Let's look at how they're designed, how they're created, and maybe you can become someone who creates and designs these games, not just a consumer of the game, but now you can influence the industry based on creating things that you see. Now, not only are you doing something you love, but now you have the opportunity to get paid to do that, create a career, create a lifestyle that you want, and still do something that's, fun. One of the things I always say, and I've said it to you plenty of times, if you have someone who can get paid to ride a skateboard, and there's, it's a sport, and these guys do some amazing things. I said, there's not very many things that you can't do where you can't make a life or make a living doing it. Yeah. And so find those things that they're gravitating to and allow them to engage in it from the designer level, from the marketing level. So now I can see it not only as a consumer, but as a producer and as someone who can create the type of technology that you're going to be using in the future, and that may change the world.
Yeah, and I think in this country and in this world, we've discussed many times, a lack of access to capital and wealth. But one thing that technology has allowed is access to knowledge, much greater access to knowledge. Books that thousands and thousands of books that are online that you probably wouldn't have access to in your area or physically. Mm-hmm. YouTube, we call it YouTube University in this house because there's endless amounts of things you can learn from others. I think that access to knowledge is going to be key, and it's a real positive impact of, once again, that connectivity and allowing people a space to share all the knowledge that they've gained in their lives. And that's going to be huge for the youth. But one thing that I've found interesting is, we've talked about this, is the jobs. So a lot of jobs have become automated because technology has consolidated a lot of the things we, used to need to either manufacture or maintain or whatever. It's all kind of been condensed down to a cell phone, or, it's not as much. You don't need to buy as many products because it's not consolidated, which means that we've consolidated a lot of jobs. But you've noted that there's actually a lot of jobs being created by technology. How does that balance work out?
Well, if I understand it correctly, and I don't have the number in front of me, I wish I did, but for every job lost, there is, a certain number of jobs that are being created as a result of technology. You need, like, for instance, everything that we're doing now is going to become digital. So with people hacking and being able to get into your phones, your computers, that creates a problem. Yeah. So you need cybersecurity. You need individuals who can go in and prevent those things from happening. So those are jobs that are being created as a result of that. You need people that can make the repairs to the computers, the technology, the robots, all these different things, who can, make sure that they function and work properly. Yeah. So there is a lot of areas in which technology is going to produce many, many more jobs. Here's the challenge right now, particularly as people who are probably middle age are losing those jobs. it's transitioning from doing something that you probably did with your hands or manually to going into technology, in which most middle-aged people are intimidated by, and being able to take courses, get certifications to transition into that world to where now I can make a living, whether it be cybersecurity, whether it be coding or whatever the case may be. And I think that's where the bigger challenge is making that jump from doing something that is far different from something that now you're going to have to do to make a living. So I think we got to plug that gap and create those programs, or make those programs more accessible so that people can make those transitions.
Yeah. One thing that worries me about that, though, is luckily I think I'm in an industry that'll never go out of business, which is business. There'll always be things to sell, advertise, market, do things like that. But if you are if your passion is mechanic, you like tinkering things with your hands, and that, that industry becomes automated. And yeah, there are obviously opportunities to design and do things like that, but are we losing a lot of fields that that are good for a lot of people, that are people's passion?
I think on some level, but at the same time, I think there are still many opportunities for people to do things with their hands, the creative stuff that people, building homes is becoming a little more technical, but those are still things that you have an electrician, you have plumbers, you have framers that can come in and do these things that are necessary. Maybe down the road in the future that may change. Yeah. But as of now, I still think those are valuable skills, because, you need someone to understand how this thing works, how it connects. When you plug everything together, does it work the way it needs to work? And if it doesn't, who does that troubleshooting, and those type of things. So I think the human touch is definitely necessary. As we expand and we continue to go down this road, where that leads us and how the balance of hands-on versus more technical, visual, and seeing things from a computer or a phone, I don't know what the ultimate outcome. I'm hoping that it's balanced enough to allow us to continue with that human touch and don't consume us to the point of where, everything is touchscreen. Yeah.
I think some irrational fear I have is like the Industrial Revolution, where, I don't know what the percentage is, but most, the young men were going to work in factories, and luckily they could support families, and it actually had a lot of benefits. But I think about me as an individual, if you forced me to go work in a factory, I'd be miserable. You know what I mean? And so as we move towards a lot of jobs being, confined to the technology sector, you have to be able to work with the computer, you have to be able to do these things. I think for most people, that's probably not a problem. It creates a lot of jobs, and I think it kind of evens the playing field a little bit. But for those, I'm not a huge technology person. That maybe I'm scared that we'll be working in these big warehouses, everybody's sitting at computers doing cybersecurity, and it's is that where we're headed? And if it is, I think it has its benefits, like I said. But I also am afraid that we lose a little bit of the individualism of everyone working with their hands and being able to take trades and crafts that you can support a family with. That's not necessarily the new thing or the new idea.
Well, at this point, I don't see it happening that way, because when you think about the influencers on social media, these are just people who are sitting around doing things that they enjoy, or a hobby that they have, and they got millions of followers in which they're getting paid because they influence people. And then the business world, the companies, marketers come and say, hey, you have influence over 1 million people. You've kind of done our work for us. These are people who like certain things. They're going to look at a certain product to buy, and boom, we'll pay you because you've already done the hard work. You got their attention, and we'll pay you X amount of dollars as long as you keep your viewership up and your following up. Makes our job easier. And it allows people to be creative. It allows people to do things that, who would imagine? Like I said, we talked about when your mom was working on her doctorate. I remember coming in and she had the computer on, and there was a lady was just sitting there. The lady's sitting on the computer studying, a little bit of music, and she's studying with her. I'm like, what you looking at? Oh, well, she studies and I'm just studying, and that's just, I don't know how many viewers this lady had. I'm just like, wow, that's a unique idea. Why not think of that? So things like that, you never know with now as more people become engaged and have access to technology, you're going to have probably 4 or 5 billion people who you can have access to, who you can market to, who you can sell products to. So I think you'll still have the individuality and just being able to find different ways of being creative to access and correspond with different people.
Yeah, I think it's cool, and one of the positives that come out of that too is a lot of the jobs that we have or that are technology driven, I think a lot of times I see people can do them a lot faster. They can consolidate their work and they have a lot more free time. And with that, it seems to be there can be a lot of positives that come out of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some studies done, in recent years that said the average person works probably 3.5, maybe 4 hours a day. You're in the office, but how productive are you really, other than being there? And so with the technology, which allows you to be more efficient and effective, like even now with COVID, right? You have people now that are moving throughout the country who don't need to be in a certain location to work because the technology allows them to do their job from anywhere. And I think that's going to open up communities and places where, like here where we are in the Coachella Valley, where property values are rising because people are moving here. It's a lot more cost effective and less congested. And now I can still do my work. And if I have to commute to LA or San Francisco or wherever every so often, it's still not as bad as commuting and living in that congestion for those who kind of got tired of it, or the cost of living in a place like that where you got a 1-bedroom apartment. It's probably $3,500. You can buy a 4 or 5 bedroom house where your average mortgage will be, $2,500, give or take. So there is opportunities from an economic standpoint for people to live a better quality of life.
Well, with that being said, what are the potential positive impacts for our community?
For this community, property values go up. So if you're a homeowner and you own property, that's good.
Yeah.
The value of your property has increased. If you're renting and you're on a lower end of the economic ladder, that can create problems now, because now prices of everything is going up. The cost of living is going up. And if your wages don't go up with that, that's going to create some challenges, whether it be more homelessness, whether it just be people having to, live more difficult lives, work more jobs. So those are the things that I see that could be, negative as it relates to this.
One thing I find interesting, and I guess as a worry, is as these things become more automated and we talk about technology kind of taking over a lot of the job market, that requires an education background in science, technology, engineering, and math, which people of color and lower socioeconomic status don't necessarily have access to. We've seen throughout history. I guess I fear that gap widening because now the job market is leading towards that, and the people who are getting educated in those fields are people with greater socioeconomic status. Those with lower socioeconomic status have less access to it, so they're falling even more behind. What is not the solution, but is that something that we should worry about?
I think it's something that we can look at, and if everything is moving in that direction, or a considerable amount of our economy is moving in that direction, just like we started an educational system to train factory workers and those type of things, the system or the educational process is being realigned to address those needs. It just have to be something that we be intentional in our communities to say, wait, these are things that we have to have, not just to reading and writing, but we need to understand this technology, the impacts of it, to be able to make the designs or code, or to at the very least understand the magnitude of it so that we don't be negatively impacted by it. Yeah. But we can be those out on the forefront making the changes and producing the revenue and generating the resources that we need to sustain ourselves and live a quality life that we desire.
I think it's funny, this popped in my head just now. The movie Black Panther, where it depicted Wakanda, which was an African country where they were the world leaders in technology. They had advanced technology that no one else in the world had seen or even visualized, and they had it, and they were years and years ahead in weaponry and agriculture, so many different aspects. And I think that's really cool. As people in this country, And that movie is reality. You know, people, you know, African countries since the beginning of time have always been on the cutting edge of technology and innovation. But as we've been in this country, I think I wouldn't say we've fallen behind, but it's been difficult for us as a whole to be on the cutting edge of technology and innovation because we're always just kind of trying to make it, trying to survive. As I think we've reached at least somewhat of a point where, you know, a good portion of people are comfortable. How do we make sure, or I think not how do we make sure, but we have to make sure that we are thinking forward about what's about to come down the pipeline. And it's pretty simple. We're talking about it here, technology, things that are going to be innovating. We have to make sure we're a part of that process.
Right. I think we have to look at what are the things that are going to impact our lives negatively? What are the things the next 5 to 10 years that if these things happen, they're going to be detrimental to us?
Yeah.
And then we look at how do we solve those problems? What are the resources we need? What are the skills we need? What are the education we need so that we can prevent those things from happening? But not only prevent them, but we create something that's going to provide us with opportunities. You know, not always on the defense, but now we can be offensive minded to say, now we want to create a whole nother environment. Let's think beyond the environment that we live in and let's create one that we desire. And I think that has been our challenges over the years in this country, is that we've seen our conditions and the circumstances and we focused on that. But I want to get to the point of where we're not just surviving, but we're thriving. So we're imagining in worlds that are beyond what we can currently see, and we can manifest those and execute in what we're doing in technology and the jobs and the actions and the steps that we're taking to create the world. I mean, you think the world we want. I mean, think about Disneyland. Somebody had to sit down and think, man, I would love to have a place where kids will come and families will come and they'll have rides and they'll have entertainment and they'll pay me a lot of money to come do it. Yeah. I mean, 100 years ago, that probably was unfathomable when somebody was saying, what are you talking about? Yeah. You know, that dude was probably, at today's age, he'd probably been, you know, considered crazy. But we create our environment in our world through our minds and our imagination. And I think that's one of the things that being in poverty and living in the conditions that we've had over the years have limited us. So if we're in places where we can think and we don't have to worry about, I don't have nothing to eat, I don't have a place to stay. But if those things are taken care of, and those are things I don't have to concern myself, I can think beyond my circumstances now. I can think about stuff that's considered out of this world. Yeah. And I think that's where we have to move to. And I think technology can allow us to move in those directions if we use it in the right way.
Yeah, using it. And I think, once again, going back to what I said, that access to knowledge is something that we haven't always had. So it should somewhat level the playing field. And I think we should be able to get into the game, if you will. And I think that's something that's going to be key for us as a community, because it's there. You know what I mean? The access to every, like you talked about last episode, every household has a laptop, has a computer, or at least a mobile device. You can find the information. It's just up to you to go make sure you get it and use it and wield it to your will.
Yeah, and I look at the generations after me, you know, your generation and Malia's generation, and your generations are much smarter and much more knowledgeable of things in my generation. There's things that Malia knows at 11 that, you know, I'm just finding out, you know, I'm 50, yeah. You know, so those are the type of things that are exciting, is just being able to make sure we are providing the proper direction and guidance so that that information is used in a proper way and not misused. Because, you know, information is nebulous. It is not neither good or bad. It's your intent and how you use it. And so sometimes being half informed or not informed at all, or having information that you don't know how to process and utilize, can also be dangerous. And so we want to be able to take information, process it, to use it in ways that's going to have a positive impact on us and the communities that we live in and the people around us.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of the theme of these past 2 episodes on technology, is that it's there, it's available, it's up to you to decide how you're going to wield it. Like you said, it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just up to the user.
Well, let's take you, for example, and using the technology where you sell and trade shoes. So you may go out and buy a particular brand of sneakers and they cost you $100. And as you watch the market, you may be able to sell it for $250 or $300 or more. So that's allowing you to become an entrepreneur on a small scale. But imagine if you said, you know what, I'm going to focus on this and I'm going to make a living doing this. That could be a possibility for you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, say, some shoes, you know, are valued at, you know, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, which to me, I still can't fathom.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things I'm looking at it, because when I go buy shoes, I'm intending on wearing them. For me, for many of you now, as you was explaining, it's kind of an art form. It's sort of an investment in something that can be, you know, increase in value, that can be sold and bought, you know, over time. So the sky's the limit. You know, I mean, when you were younger and you used to buy and sell phones. So you've always been in that realm, but the technology allowed you to be able to buy those things at a discounted rate. Somebody's broken phone, and you look and research to determine, well, this is the problem with the phone. I can take it and fix it, buy it for $20. I can sell it for $70 or whatever the case. So those are a lot of opportunities that I see that will continue to happen moving forward. It's just a matter of us being, you know, tapped in and, you know, disciplined enough to say, hey, these are the opportunities I need to take advantage of.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I said, these past 2 episodes, we've been talking about the positives, the negatives. I think there's a lot of dangers we need to worry about, but also a lot of positive things that we can look forward to and make sure that we take advantage of. So, because this is our future at the end of the day. Technology, as every generation before us, we're always advancing. But even more than ever, you know, at the speed that we're going, we have to make sure we're safe, but also, you know, taking advantage of the opportunities that are in front of us. So,
yeah,
I think that'll be a wrap on this episode. Appreciate you for tuning in, and hope you're with us on the next one.
peace.
Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're notified every time we post a video.